Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Dwinells. Finally, back with another new episode. Now, most of this time off was not of my choosing. If you follow me on social media, Facebook or Instagram, you already know this because it has been technical difficulty after technical difficulty. We definitely had some gremlins in the machine, but I'm looking at my waveforms right now and it all looks very good, so I believe this episode is finally going to come out. This is the one that I've been trying to do since I returned from my Thanksgiving time vacation in the Dominican Republic, and it's inspired by that trip. But now that trip was just about a month ago, so it's old news now, but hey, fresh to you. So I am going to talk a bit about my trip, which is not necessarily spooky related, but I'm going to save that for the end of the episode. I like to, I know some of you care about that and some of you don't care at all, so I'd rather get to the meat of the episode as quickly as possible. And tonight, like I said, we are talking about mythology from the Dominican Republic inspired by my trip. Before we get to it, I do want to remind you to check out the website, spookyas.com or spookyasshit.com. They both take you to the same place, and that is the show's blog page. From there, you can listen to each and every episode, including the ones no longer available on your favorite streaming service. You can also find links to all of my social media. We are at spookyasshit on both Twitter and Instagram. I said I was going to stop saying Twitter, but it's just in my brain that I say it that way. So, you can follow us on Twitter. Nothing really gets posted. And you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. And of course, there you can also join the closed group if you really want to have deep dive conversations without the weight of public judgment upon you. All right, so tonight we are going to talk about the ciguapa. The ciguapa is a mythological creature commonly described as having the form of a beautiful human female with brown or sometimes dark blue skin and slanted almond-shaped eyes. They have a very long mane of smooth, glossy hair that just so happens to cover their private parts. But perhaps the most distinctive feature of a ciguapa, and the way you can always tell a ciguapa from a normal naked lady you might find in the jungles of the Dominican Republic, is that she has backwards-facing feet. The reason for this is so that if you try to follow her, and you're not watching her directly, if you just try to follow her tracks, you'll actually be walking in the wrong direction, because it will look like her feet are going forward when actually she is going backwards. Or maybe I said that the wrong way, but you know what I meant. They are said to inhabit the high mountain regions of the Dominican Republic. Now, just a little bit about my trip. I did spend a little time in the mountains. I did not happen to run into any ciguapas, but actually on Thanksgiving Day, I ate my Thanksgiving lunch on a mountaintop in the Dominican Republic. We did not have turkey, but we did sit with other Americans, and we had some of the best fried chicken I've ever had in my life. So I know this region where they're talking about, these mountainous regions. I didn't see any ciguapas, but this is where they are said to live. They are very shy, and often they appear to be very sad. They can often be found crying or wailing a mournful lament, but it is unclear if they are actually upset or if they are simply playing the part of the woman in distress to trick wayward men into coming to their aid. The men are lured in by their vocalizations, which have alternately been described as soft chirps, whispers, crying, or singing. I think I find the chirps the most interesting. If there was a lady and she started chirping at you, how would you take that? I don't know. Maybe it's different in Dominican culture. Maybe that's something that the ladies do down there. I didn't notice anybody doing that while I was there. Let me know. Actually, I dated a Dominican woman for a while, and I don't remember her or anyone in her family chirping, but maybe that's a cultural thing. But I would say, even if you see a beautiful woman in the forest and you hear her chirp, maybe that's a sign. Steer clear of this. Although you might think, well, if you see this beautiful long-haired woman in the woods, okay, her feet are backwards, but otherwise, she's looking pretty good. What's the problem here? I'll tell you what the problem is. It could be that her chirps or her singing or her crying or whatever it is, this is a way, some say, that she hypnotizes her victims. Ah, victims, yes. We'll get to that in a second. But there are different theories and slightly different descriptions of the ciguapa depending on the region of the Dominican that you are in. Right now we're talking about mountain ciguapas, but they all have different ways that they could possibly hypnotize you, and their song is one way, and their stare is another. Some say they have both of these powers. Some say, no, they only ever hypnotize you by looking at you. Some say it's only their song that hypnotizes you. And some say they don't actually hypnotize you at all. But in any event, what she does is she allegedly is able to hypnotize you, and when you are so entranced, she will lead you into a cave and devour you whole. Now, in previous times, her victims were described as men lured away by this beautiful woman, seemingly with the promise of a sexual encounter, which sometimes the ciguapa was willing to grant. However, it would be the last encounter that you would have as a regular mortal man, because once you're in that cave, like we said, she will devour you whole. Although sometimes, in some traditions, it is said that she doesn't actually devour your physical body, she swallows your soul. And with your soul swallowed, she or her minions or the devil or whoever can take control of your physical body. So you return to your own civilization, but you're actually then doing the bidding of the ciguapa or her evil higher power or her minions or whatever. So, again, it depends on which region we're in, which version of the legend we get, but these are things that I was told that she could possibly do. Now, she might hypnotize you and lead you into the cave, but others say she doesn't need to hypnotize you using her eyes or her magical voice. She just uses her beauty alone, and that enough is to lure men into her cave. The point I was trying to get to earlier, by the way, I realized I left that point. They used to say men all the time, but now I wonder, even in folklore, are we more inclusive now when we say men or women? There are, by the way, reports of male ciguapas. I don't know if they have a different name, ciguapos. I don't know. I didn't find that in the research because almost all of the cases that you can find online or that you hear about involve a female ciguapa attacking a male human. But listen, it's 2019. Maybe we can branch out. Maybe we can have girl-on-girl ciguapa action. Okay, so she is alleged to lure you into her cave where she might eat you or swallow your soul. This is bad news, right? But not all of her activities are said to be so malicious and evil. For example, she might just come by your house at night and steal raw meat or butter from your home. She's also been known to braid horses' tails in the middle of the night. So if you wake up and you see your horse's tail is braided, you know Ciguapa has been there. No human could braid a horse's tail like that. By the way, a little tidbit that I picked up from the tour guide as we were going through the more remote villages in the Dominican, you'll notice a lot of times you see the concrete houses or the wooden houses, and you see them in pictures, and you see them on documentaries and things like that, and you notice they have bars all over everything, and you think, oh man, there must be a lot of crime in this place. But our tour guide was saying that actually that's not true. These are pretty low crime areas. They said because the villages are so small, if there's someone walking around stealing things, the other villagers notice if someone has new things all of a sudden, and so really there's no point in stealing. They said that the bars do help prevent theft, and they also said if there's a raper, and that is the term he used, if there's a raper around, it's good to have bars on your window. But for the most part, it's just an aesthetic thing that they learned from, I believe they said the Spanish, and that now that's just kind of an aesthetic that the Dominicans enjoy. So it's not so much that they're afraid of people outside or of crimes or anything, but it's just they say your house isn't complete until you have the bars over your window and your gates and all that kind of thing. So, interesting fact. I thought it was interesting anyway. All right, now, you might wonder how we learned about the Ciguapa. Well, of course, there is some debate along this. Some say it's an old Tejano legend. Tejano people were the first inhabitants, the original inhabitants of the Dominican. For those who don't know, the island that the Dominican Republic is on, they share with Haiti, which I'll have more to say about that in a little bit. And the whole island is known as Hispaniola. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it's probably because you learned about it in your American history class, because that is where Christopher Columbus landed when he discovered, I say in quotations, the New World. Of course, his interactions with the Tejano people did not end up being such a good thing for the Tejano people. And when the Spanish came in and colonized the island, there began the plight of the Tejano people. And of course, they brought in slaves from Africa as well. And eventually, all of the original inhabitants of the island died out. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that in the Caribbean there are perhaps some Tejano people still alive today, or people with Tejano roots, but they do not exist on Hispaniola, according to what I was told by our tour guide. But we do have some writings that describe ciguapas, and they describe her not in the terrifying way that we've learned about, where they take you to the cave and eat you and all that. The first description we have is found in a short story by Francisco Javier Anglo Guardi, a poet, novelist, essayist, and playwright, born in Santo Domingo. Guardi published several works in 1866, among them the story called La Ciguapa. He describes her in the following way. Sleeping in the crowns of cedars and feeding on fish from rivers, birds, and fruit, the ciguapa, such is the name by which it is known, is a creature that rises only a rod high in length. But do not think there is a deformity in her proportions, as the so-called dwarves in Europe and even other parts of America. Far from it. There is an exact harmony in all her muscles and limbs, a great beauty in her face, and agility so full of spontaneity and grace that she leaves absorbed anyone that sees her movements. She has the golden skin of a true Indian, black almond-shaped eyes, soft, lustrous, and thick hair, which rolls down the female's beautiful back all the way down to her calf. In the story, ciguapas are jealous creatures, and when they encounter someone of the opposite sex, they form a connection and die together. In the story, a young couple had gone down to the river to fetch some water and were spied by a male ciguapa. 3 days after their encounter, the girl that had witnessed the ciguapa dies. Guardi ends the story by saying that if a man encounters a female ciguapa, both the man and the ciguapa will die at the same time. But if a woman sees a male ciguapa, she will die shortly thereafter, and the male ciguapa will go on to collect more victims. But as I said earlier, aside from this story, reports of male ciguapas are almost non-existent. Now, even though we are given all these warnings about how they might be able to hypnotize you using their eyes, their voice, or just their amazing beauty, some people still wish to try to capture a ciguapa. The only way to capture a ciguapa, so they say, is by tracking them at night during the full moon and with the help of a very special dog. The dog must be black and white, and he must have at least one extra leg. Now, legend has it that the ciguapa has been caught, but anytime they are caught, they die soon after being placed in captivity. So that is the general description of ciguapas. Yet, they are actually described quite differently from region to region. This has led some to question if these creatures are, in fact, all the same creatures, or if people are actually describing wholly different creatures. In any event, the natives refer to any variation as ciguapas. All forms of ciguapas are considered to be magical beings, but some are said to be beautiful, and others are said to look hideously like corpses. All sources agree that they are wild creatures. They are often compared to mermaids due to their powers to lure men away with their singing and the fact that a lot of them live in coastal areas. It is believed that ciguapas live in the ocean in these areas and that they walk to shore to hunt each night. In the morning, you can tell if ciguapa has been in your area because, as we said, they appear to be very sad and they cry all the time. And if you go out and look at the rocks and you see wet spots on the rocks, you will know a ciguapa has been there and has cried on the rocks, thus staining it with her tears. Children in these coastal areas are told that if they stand by the shore facing the sea and yell in Spanish, although I don't speak Spanish, so I'm going to give you the English translation. They're told that if they stand there and yell, "Maria, oh Maria, your mother's a whore and mine is not," a big wave will break and take the children and drown them at sea. Now, I think that's an odd thing to say. First of all, I guess the ciguapa's name is Maria. I mean, there's more than one. They never said there's only one ciguapa, but maybe that's just like the general term for an unknown lady, like we have Jane here in the United States. So maybe that's just their general term. Or maybe it's just believed that all ciguapas are named Maria. But also, you specifically have to say that their mother is a whore and yours is not. What if you were to say, your mother is a whore, mine is too? That they're okay with? I'm just wondering. I'm just asking questions here. I'm, crazy American, just trying to figure out what the rules are with these ciguapas. Though many believe the myth of the ciguapa is of a native Dominican origin, like I said, Taino people, it's actually been argued that it's probably much more recent because the ciguapa myth has many characteristics in common with ancient European mermaids and other mystical creatures of that era. There are no known Taino artifacts or lore that make reference to any creature even remotely similar to a ciguapa. But from around the world, we do have many mythological creatures similar to ciguapa in Europe and parts of Asia. Now, I've already mentioned mermaids, which were known to send sailors off course by luring them into dangerous parts of the ocean with their singing or their beauty. But a similar yet wholly distinct creature is the siren. In Greek mythology, sirens were dangerous creatures who lured nearby sailors with their enticing music and singing, and they would lead ships to the rocky coast of their island, where the ships would become wrecked on the rocks. Now, when people think of sirens, I think that we kind of picture them as mermaids, but actually they're not mermaids at all. Like I said, it's a wholly different creature. Sirens were believed to combine women and birds in various ways. Not women and fish, women and birds. In early Greek art, sirens were represented as birds with large women's heads, bird feathers, and scaly feet. Later, they were represented as female figures with the legs of birds, with or without wings, playing a variety of musical instruments, but normally harps and lyres. Morgens are water spirits from the UK that drown men, and I could be pronouncing that wrong, but that's how it's spelled. Morgens. Could be Morgans, I don't know. They may lure men to their death with their own beauty or with glimpses of underwater gardens or buildings made of crystal and gold. They are also blamed for heavy flooding that destroys crops and villages. The Ciguanabana is a supernatural creature from Central American folklore. And I have no idea if I said that correctly, but Ciguanabana, that is fun to say. So hopefully that is how you say it, and if so, good on you, Central America. That's a fun word. It is a shape-changing spirit that typically takes the form of an attractive, long-haired woman when seen from behind. She lures men away into danger before turning around and revealing her face. Now, her face is not the face of the beautiful woman they thought they were following. In fact, when she turns around, she has the face of a horse. Or, alternatively, a skull. Ciguapa, fun to say, and a fun creature. I don't know, if a human with a horse face, I don't want to make any jokes, but if you've seen Ed Wood, you know what I'm thinking here. The Scandinavian Naken were male water spirits who played enchanted songs on their violins, luring women and children to drown in lakes or streams. The Patasola, or One-Foot, is one of many myths in South American folklore about female monsters from the jungle, appearing to male hunters or loggers in the middle of the wilderness when they think about women. The Patasola appears in the form of a beautiful and seductive woman, often in the likeness of a loved one, who lures a man away from his companions deep into the jungle. There, the Patasola reveals her true nature, hideous appearance as a one-legged creature with a ferocious, vampire-like lust for human flesh and blood, attacking and devouring the flesh or sucking the blood from her victims. In Slavic folklore, the Rusalaka are said to lure young men, seduced by either her looks or her voice, into the depths of waterways where she would entangle their feet with her long red hair and submerge them. She would then wait until the victim had drowned or, on some occasions, tickle them to death as she herself laughed. It is also said that the Rusakali can change their appearance to match the taste of any man they are about to seduce. But, generally, a Rusakali is considered to represent the ideal beauty, so even in their natural form, they generally do not need to alter their appearance to entice men. So that is basically it. That is the myth of Ciguapa, which is kind of like the biggest known mythological creature in the Dominican Republic, from what I've been told. Hey, if you're Dominican and you happen to know differently, please feel free, write in and let me know. spookyassshit@gmail.com, or find me on the social medias. And also a little bit of similar creatures from around the world. It's always interesting when you think about how a lot of our mythology tends to be the same all around the world. And this can lead people to think, like, you see this kind of creature shows up a lot. You see vampires show up a lot. You see creatures, werewolves or beasts of some sort, show up in almost every culture. So this could lead you to think one of two things. If you're a believer, you would say, well, this shows you that there is something out there. There is something that's different. How could all these people be seeing the same thing and describing the same kinds of things if they weren't really there? On the other hand, if you're a skeptic, you say, well, this shows you the limits of the human imagination, or at least what happens, creatively, you stumble upon the same ideas, what they call in music industry and other art forms comedy, where people come up with the same riffs or jokes or ideas. This is called parallel thinking. So it's just something that catches on for some reason with different cultures, and so then when you compare them, it's not so much that these things are definitely out there, but it's the idea that these are things that appeal to all forms of humanity for one reason or another. So it's just very interesting to me to read these descriptions from around the world. I'll let you be the judge and decide if you think that these creatures really do exist, or if this is just part of mythology. Longtime listeners already can guess where my thoughts lie. Before we leave, and I do apologize, especially after keeping you guys waiting for so long, that this is a shorter episode, but that's really all that the mythology has to say. Although I will mention this. One more thing about the Ciguapa is I forgot to write it down in my notes, but in some of the traditions, it says not that she has like long hair that just covers her private parts coming down from her head, but that she has fine hair all over her body. That it's really more what you would describe as the wild man of the woods, like the big furry person. Well, I mean, not even big actually, because they're described as being kind of small. So not like a Bigfoot, but like a small hairy person. Enkidu, I guess, if you want to take it all the way back to the oldest known story that we have, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Enkidu was said to be a wild man, and he was covered in hair. So again, another example of another culture with a whole nother belief. So, like I said, before we break, I want to tell you a little bit about my trip to the Dominican. As I mentioned on the last episode, I was very, very nervous to be going on this trip for various reasons. And one of them was I was not feeling super well at the time. If you've been listening to the show, you know that I've had numerous health problems over the past year. And I was afraid, look, I don't feel good. I feel like there's something wrong with my head. I was having a lot of sinus problems, a lot of headaches, a lot of eye problems, and ear problems. My ears were congested. I said, I'm worried I'm going to get on this plane, and I said on the episode that my head was going to explode. I wasn't literally afraid that my head was going to explode, but I was a little bit nervous that it would trigger some kind of disruption in my head and there would be a problem. I was nervous that my eardrum might burst. When my eyes started hurting, I was nervous that something would go wrong with my eyesight. And I was honestly just nervous about this whole trip. I don't do foreign travel very often, and I was just worried I'd get there, I'd have more health problems, and there would not be my trusted doctors there to take care of me. But I'm happy, very happy, to report that all my fears were unfounded the day I left. And this is so ridiculous. You're going to a sunny paradise island to have a nice vacation on a fancy resort, and I'm sitting here whining and crying about it, right? And but the thing was, I was literally sick to my stomach with like nerves and stress about going on this trip. And I am, like I said, happy to report that none of those bad things happened. And basically it took a day for all that stress to leave my body. So the first day was a little bit rough, but after that, I had a wonderful time. I did not drink the water. I think that was the key to my success down there. I didn't even use it to brush my teeth. We had 14 people in our party, and I believe it was 12 people total that got sick while we were down there, and I was not one of them. And I think that is why I was very careful about what I ate and what I drank. But otherwise, we had a very good time. And we did go on an excursion, like I said, to the more remote. What's the word I'm trying to say? Remote. There it is. Remote areas, and saw a little bit what life was like outside the resort, which to me was really good, because when you get to the resorts, this is the first time I've ever done like an all-inclusive, and you get there and it looks really nice, but it basically looks like Orlando. Like it's not so drastically different than what you might see closer to home. You know, there's some palm trees, and then they have restaurants and pools, fancy pools, and it's all very nice, but you kind of want to, I want to see what this country looks like. Not, I saw a little bit of the city that we were in Punta Cana, and, nothing super impressive about that. But it was really cool to go out to the countryside and see, the heart of the country, more of the heart of the country, and get a feel for how they live and how they work out there. We went to some farms and some plantations and saw those kinds of things too. And we saw the schools out there. So that part was really fun. Like I said, that's how I spent my Thanksgiving day. Also, interestingly, this is going to blow your mind, some of you, but believe it or not, on Thanksgiving night at the resort, they have these nightly shows that they do and they ask for volunteers. And I hate, even though I'm, a song and dance man, by training, I am not so outgoing like in real life. I'm outgoing on stage, but not in real life. And they were looking for volunteers, and I was purposely turning my head. So the first night they got these volunteers up on stage, and they basically played Simon Says, and it wasn't so bad. So whatever. So the next time we went, which was Thanksgiving night, they came out looking for volunteers again. And I didn't want to do it, but they were trying to get me up on stage this time. And I said, you know what? It wasn't so bad the other night. It's probably the same thing. fine, I'll play Simon Says and I'll get myself eliminated really quick and it will be over with, as long as it's not a stupid dance contest. Well, guess what? The night I was up, of course, it was a stupid dance contest. But listen, you guys, you know how it is. When you put me on stage, I'm going to shine like a diamond, baby. So yeah, I took part in a dance contest. And yes, I am now an international, because there was other people in this competition from all over the world. I am an international dance champion. I won that contest. They handed me a bottle of mamawana, which is a special drink mixture. This was just the roots that you have to steep it in rum for 3 days and then empty that out and then steep it in some wine and rum for a few more days and then you drink it. I did serve it recently at a little Christmas get-together, and most people did not enjoy it. However, I will say the mamawana that I have here at home tastes much different than the mamawana I had there on the island. Maybe I used the wrong wine or something, but you could really taste the roots. There must be some kind of licorice bark in there, licorice root in there, because it tastes very licoricey. And that is one of the roots that we tried on our trip when we went to the plantation. So I know that they grow those down there. I'm guessing that's in there. Anyway, if you know about mamawana, it's supposed to heal all kinds of things, and it's also supposed to be an aphrodisiac. Wink, wink. And let's see, anything else interesting about the trip? Oh, I wanted to mention Haiti. I actually really wanted to go to Haiti while we were there. And the certain young lady who I was with was 1,000% not behind that idea. She was like, you were nervous about coming to the DR, and now you want to go to Haiti? And, listen, it's only 8 hours away from where we were staying. 8-hour drive. And it's like the home of voodoo as we know it here. So yeah, I wanted to check that out. I wanted to learn more about that. Wanted to do a little cultural exchange. Unfortunately, I was denied the opportunity. But Haiti, I was so close, and I wanted to visit you, and I just didn't get the opportunity. On our tour, we did drive by a cemetery, but I didn't want to be the weirdo on the tour who's like, hey, can we stop at that cemetery? I tried to take pictures from the bus that we were on. They didn't come out very good. Maybe I'll post a couple if I get the chance on the Instagram at spooky-ass-shit. But they did look different. They looked, I guess, like what you might see, kind of like those above ground graves from what I saw, what you might see in Louisiana or parts of Mexico. Where they have, water levels and everything they have to be careful of, so they bury the dead, they entomb them above ground. But I didn't get a great look at that, unfortunately. If I had rented a car, that'd be somewhere I would try to go back to, although it might be hard to explain, especially if they're not English speaking, why I'm out there. I might just think I'm a weirdo. I don't know. Culture might be different down there. Here you can walk around a cemetery and it's not a big deal. In fact, they kind of design them that way. That's a whole topic for another episode. But anyway, okay, I think I've rambled on enough. If you have questions about my trip to Dominican, then you can hit me up on the social media at spooky-ass-shit on Twitter and Instagram, and find us on Facebook, facebook.com/spookyas. Please, if you have a moment, a wonderful Christmas gift, Festivus gift, Hanukkah gift to me would be to take a moment to leave a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever system you happen to be listening from. And if you could write some encouraging words in a review, that would be wonderful. Listen, it's been a long time since I've got a wordy review on iTunes, and I would love it because it really helps motivate me, helps me remember that people are listening, people are talking about the show, and that you're enjoying it, because trust me, even though it's been a long time since I've done an episode, and perhaps this isn't the best example, considering it's a short episode and then I kind of rambled on about my trip, but I put a lot of work into this show, and the reason I talk to you guys so much is because I feel like a lot of the longtime listeners, you guys through Facebook and everything, we've become, at the very least, virtual friends, so I thought you might want to hear some of it. And of course, coming up soon, we will have our Christmas traditional ghost story. I'm going to be finding a story, or creating a story perhaps, for you guys for our Christmas tradition of telling ghost stories around the fire. Of course, it's only a figurative fire unless, you light a real fire in your home. In the fireplace. Don't actually set your home on fire. I shouldn't have to say that, but you never know who's listening. That's enough rambling from me. Until next time, don't be afraid.